The slap echoed through the rusty anchor bar like a gunshot. Staff Sergeant Derek Morrison's massive hand connected with Maya Chen's face so hard that blood immediately pooled at the corner of her mouth. She was 20 years old, 5'2", and looked like someone's kid sister who had wandered into the wrong place. Every person in that bar expected her to cry, to scream, to crumble. Instead, Maya Chen slowly touched her bleeding lip, examined the crimson on her fingertips, and smiled. "Thank you," she whispered. "I needed that." And Derek Morrison's nightmare began. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And if this story moves you, make sure you're subscribed, because you won't want to miss what happens next. Maya Chen had been sitting alone for exactly 47 minutes when Staff Sergeant Derek Morrison decided she looked like an easy target. She had chosen the corner booth deliberately, the one with the worn leather seats, and the wobbly table that nobody else wanted. Her oversized college hoodie swallowed her small frame, and her long black hair fell across her face like a curtain she could hide behind. To anyone glancing her way, she looked like a lost freshman who had stumbled into the wrong bar. Maybe someone waiting for an older boyfriend, maybe someone who should have stayed on campus where she belonged. That was exactly how Maya wanted it. The rusty anchor bar sat 3 blocks from Naval Amphibious Base Little Creek, which meant it attracted a particular crowd on Friday nights. Military personnel from every branch, contractors with government clearances, veterans who couldn't quite let go of the life. The air smelled like cheap beer and cheaper cologne, and the jukebox played the same rotation of country songs it had been playing since before Maya was born. She wrapped her hands around her glass of ginger ale and waited. "Well, well, well, what do we have here?" The voice came from her left, deep and slurred and dripping with the particular confidence that only excessive alcohol could produce. Maya didn't look up. She had heard that tone before. She knew what came next. "Hey, I'm talking to you, sweetheart." Derek Morrison slid into the booth across from her without invitation. He was massive, 6'4", with shoulders that barely fit through standard doorways, and a neck thick enough to suggest either serious dedication to weightlifting or serious dedication to steroids. Probably both. His Army Ranger tab was visible on his jacket sleeve, and he wore it like a badge that entitled him to anything he wanted. Maya finally raised her eyes. "Can I help you? Now that's more like it." Derek flashed what he probably thought was a charming smile. "I've been watching you sit here all alone, and I thought to myself, that's just criminal. Pretty little thing like you shouldn't be by herself on a Friday night." "I'm fine. Thank you." "Come on, don't be like that." Derek leaned forward, and Maya caught the whiskey on his breath, sharp and sour. "Let me buy you a real drink. Whatever that is you're sipping on looks like something my grandmother would order." "It's ginger ale. I don't drink." "You don't drink?" Derek laughed like she had told the funniest joke he had ever heard. "What are you, 12? Come on. One shot won't kill you. Live a little." Maya's voice remained perfectly level. "I said no. Thank you." Something shifted in Derek's expression. The playful charm evaporated, replaced by something harder, colder. He wasn't used to rejection, and he definitely wasn't used to rejection from someone who looked like she should be taking notes in a lecture hall rather than sitting in a bar. "What's your problem?" His voice dropped lower. "You think you're too good for me or something? I don't have a problem. I'm just not interested." "Not interested." Derek repeated the words like they were a foreign language he couldn't quite translate. Behind him, Maya could see his friends gathering. 4 of them. All Rangers judging by their gear and their attitudes. They were watching with the hungry anticipation of men who sensed entertainment coming. "Hey, Tank," one of them called out. "She playing hard to get." Derek didn't take his eyes off Maya. Yeah, seems like little princess here thinks she's something special. I never said that. Maya kept her voice calm, though every nerve in her body had begun to hum with the particular awareness that had kept her alive in situations far more dangerous than this. I said I'm not interested. Those are two different things. Sounds the same to me. Then you should work on your listening comprehension. The words hung in the air between them. Derek's face flushed red, and Maya knew she had made a mistake. She had let her mouth get ahead of her judgment. It was a problem she had struggled with since childhood, this inability to simply accept disrespect in silence. What did you just say to me? I think you heard me. Derek's hand shot across the table and grabbed Maya's wrist. His grip was crushing, designed to hurt, designed to establish dominance. His fingers dug into her skin with enough force to leave marks that would last for days. Listen here, you little... Let go of my arm. Or what? Derek squeezed harder, and Maya felt the bones in her wrist grind together. What exactly are you going to do about it? The bar had gone quiet. Conversations died mid-sentence as people turned to watch the confrontation unfolding in the corner booth. Some pulled out phones. Others simply stared with the morbid curiosity of bystanders who sensed violence approaching. Maya looked at Derek's hand on her wrist, then up at his face. Her expression hadn't changed. Her breathing hadn't quickened. If anything, she seemed almost bored. You have 3 seconds to let go. Derek laughed. 3 seconds. Then what? 2 seconds. You're going to count down at me, that's adorable. Hey boys, he called out to his friends without looking away from Maya. This little girl thinks she's tough. Says she's going to do something if I don't let go. The Rangers hooted and hollered, enjoying the show. 1 second. And what happens at 0, princess? You going to cry, call your daddy. Maybe. Time's up. Maya moved so fast that later witnesses would struggle to describe exactly what happened. One moment Derek was holding her wrist with crushing force. The next moment he was clutching his hand against his chest, gasping in pain, his index and middle fingers bent at angles that fingers were never meant to bend. What the... Derek stared at his damaged hand in disbelief. You broke my fingers. Dislocated. There's a difference. Maya slid out of the booth and stood. At 5'2", she barely came up to Derek's chest, but something in her posture had changed. The shy college girl was gone. In her place stood someone else entirely. A break would have been permanent. This is just educational. You crazy? Derek swung with his good hand. It was a haymaker telegraphed from a mile away, powered by rage rather than technique. Maya watched it come like she was watching a slow-motion replay. She had all the time in the world to analyze the trajectory, calculate the force, determine the optimal response. She chose not to dodge. The slap connected with her face like a thunderclap. Her head snapped to the side and she stumbled backward into the booth, catching herself against the worn leather. Blood immediately began pooling at the corner of her mouth where her lip had split against her teeth. The entire bar held its breath. Derek stood over her chest, heaving his damaged hand still clutched against his body. That's what you get. That's what happens when you don't know your place, you little... Maya straightened slowly. She touched her fingertips to her bleeding lip, examined the crimson, like a scientist studying a particularly interesting specimen. Then she looked up at Derek with an expression that made him take an involuntary step backward. She was smiling. Thank you, she whispered. I needed that. What? I said, thank you. Maya wiped the blood from her mouth with the back of her hand, leaving a red smear across her skin. You've given me exactly what I needed. Derek's confusion was written across his face in capital letters. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She was supposed to cry. She was supposed to cower, She was supposed to prove every assumption he had ever made about women and weakness, and the natural order of things. Instead, she was thanking him. "You're insane," he said, but his voice had lost its earlier conviction. "You're actually insane." Maya reached into the pocket of her hoodie and pulled out a small bronze coin. She placed it on the table with deliberate care, the overhead light catching the intricate details etched into its surface. An anchor, an eagle, a trident. "I'm leaving now," she said quietly. "But this isn't over Staff Sergeant Morrison. Not even close. How do you know my name? Your friend called you Tank. The Rangers only give that nickname to one person per battalion. Your unit patch tells me you're with 3rd Battalion. And you've been telling stories about yourself all night loud enough for everyone in this bar to hear." Maya picked up her purse and slung it over her shoulder. "Next time you decide to put your hands on someone you don't know, maybe consider that they might be paying attention to things you don't realize." She walked toward the exit, passing by the bar, where an older man in civilian clothes sat nursing a beer. He was in his 60s, with the weathered look of someone who had seen more than his fair share of trouble. His eyes were fixed on the coin Maya had left behind. "Miss," he called out. "Miss, wait." Maya paused, but didn't turn around. "That coin." The old man's voice was barely above a whisper. "Is that what I think it is? What do you think it is? Naval Special Warfare Development Group. DevGru. The people they don't talk about on the news." Maya smiled, though he couldn't see it. "Have a good night, Chief." He pushed through the door and disappeared into the Virginia Beach night, leaving behind a stunned bar, a bleeding challenge coin, and a staff sergeant who was just beginning to understand that he had made the worst mistake of his life. Chief Petty Officer William Santos had been drinking at the Rusty Anchor for 15 years. He had seen bar fights, arrests, and one memorable incident involving a congressman and a cocktail waitress that had somehow stayed out of the newspapers. But he had never seen anything like what had just happened in the corner booth. He pushed himself off his bar stool and walked over to where Derek Morrison stood, frozen, still staring at the door Maya had walked through. The challenge coin sat on the table like an accusation. "Son," Santos said quietly, "do you have any idea what you just did?" Derek turned his expression a mixture of confusion and wounded pride. "I taught some mouthy little girl a lesson. That's what I did." "No." Santos picked up the coin and held it up to the light, confirming what he had suspected. "No, that's not what you did at all." "Who the hell are you?" "I'm someone who's been around long enough to recognize trouble when I see it." Santos traced the trident on the coin with his thumb. "This isn't a souvenir you pick up at the Navy Exchange. This is earned. And the people who earn it, they don't lose bar fights, son. They don't lose anything." Derek's friend, the one who had called out earlier, pushed through the gathering crowd. "Tank, what's going on? Who was that chick?" "I don't know." Derek's voice had lost its confidence. "Some crazy woman who—" "She's not crazy." Santos set the coin back on the table. "She's DevGru, Tier 1, the people who go places that don't exist to do things that never happened." He looked at Derek with something that might have been pity. "And you just slapped her in the face in front of 40 witnesses." The color drained from Derek's face. "That's impossible. She was tiny. She looked like a kid." "That's how it works, son. The really dangerous ones never look dangerous. It's the ones who have something to prove who walk around advertising their capabilities." Santos glanced at the security camera mounted in the corner of the bar, its red light blinking steadily. "That camera's been recording all night. High definition. Full audio. Everything that happened here is now evidence." "Evidence of what?" "Assault on a federal officer. That girl might look like she belongs in a sorority, but legally speaking, you just put your hands on a commissioned member of the United States military's most elite special operations unit." Santos shook his head. I've seen careers ended for less. I've seen prison time handed out for less. Derek's damaged hand throbbed, reminding him that the tiny woman had done something to him that he still didn't understand. One moment he had been in control, and the next moment his fingers were bending in directions that made him nauseous to remember. "She attacked me first," he protested weakly. "She broke my fingers." "Dislocated. That's what she said, right? There's a difference. And I guarantee you that camera shows you grabbing her wrist before she did anything. That's aggravated assault, son. She was defending herself." Santos turned to leave, then paused. "If I were you, I'd start making phone calls. You're going to need a lawyer. Probably a good one." Derek watched the old man walk out of the bar, leaving behind the challenge coin and the growing realization that his life had just taken a very unexpected turn. His friends gathered around him, their earlier amusement replaced by concern. "Tank, what do we do?" Jake Robinson, his closest friend in the unit, looked at the coin like it might bite him. "If she's really who that guy says she is, she's not." Derek grabbed the coin and shoved it in his pocket. "She can't be. Navy SEALs are 6-foot walls of muscle. They're not 5-foot-nothing girls who look like they should be studying for midterms." "But what if she is? Then she should have fought back." Derek straightened, trying to recapture some of his earlier confidence. "Did you see what happened? I slapped her, and she just took it. Just stood there bleeding and smiling like a psycho. That's not what elite operators do." But even as he said the words, Derek couldn't shake the memory of her eyes. The way she had looked at him after the slap, like she was seeing something he couldn't. Like she was calculating distances and angles and outcomes that existed several moves ahead of anything he could comprehend. "Let's get out of here," he said finally. "Nothing good's going to come from sticking around." They pushed through the crowd toward the exit, and Derek tried not to notice how people stepped aside to let them pass. Not out of respect like before, out of something else, something that looked uncomfortably like pity. Outside, the Virginia beach night was cool and damp, carrying the salt smell of the ocean 3 blocks away. Derek pulled out his phone and stared at the screen, trying to decide who to call. His commanding officer. A lawyer. His mother. "We should find out who she really is," Jake suggested. "If she's military, there'll be records. Someone will know something." "How are we supposed to do that?" "Walk onto the naval base and start asking questions." "I've got a buddy who works intelligence, civilian contractor, but he's got access to personnel databases." Jake was already typing on his phone. "Give me her name." "I don't know her name." "What do you mean you don't know her name? You spent 15 minutes trying to pick her up." "She never told me." Derek realized how stupid that sounded even as he said it. He had been so focused on impressing her, on demonstrating his dominance, that he had never thought to learn basic information. "But she knew mine. She knew everything about me. My nickname, my unit stories I'd been telling. So she was listening to you all night." "I guess." Jake's expression grew more concerned. "Tank, that's what surveillance looks like. That's what people do when they're gathering intelligence on a target." "I wasn't a target. I was just some guy in a bar." "You were a guy in a bar who grabbed a woman and slapped her in front of 40 people. Maybe you weren't a target before, but you definitely are now." Derek's phone buzzed with an incoming message. Unknown number. Virginia Beach area code. He opened it with trembling fingers. "Training exercise scheduled. Building 718 Naval Special Warfare Command. 1900 hours tomorrow. Failure to appear will result in formal military police notification of tonight's incident. PO2 Chen." Derek stared at the message for a long moment, reading it 3 times to make sure he understood what it said. "She's giving me a choice," he said slowly. "Show up for some kind of training thing or she files charges." That sounds like blackmail. No, it sounds like something else. Derek thought about the way she had thanked him after the slap, the way she had said he had given her exactly what she needed. It sounds like she had this planned from the beginning. planned. You're saying she wanted you to hit her. I'm saying she wasn't surprised when I did. Derek shoved his phone back in his pocket and started walking toward his car. I'm saying that whatever happens next, she's already thought about it. She's already prepared for it. So what are you going to do? Derek didn't answer right away. He was remembering something his drill instructor had told him during Ranger School years ago. The most dangerous opponent is the one who controls the battlefield before the first shot is fired. If your enemy chooses the time and place of engagement, you've already lost. The tiny woman with the bleeding lip had chosen everything. The bar, the confrontation, the outcome. And now she was choosing what came next. I'm going to show up tomorrow, Derek said finally, and I'm going to find out exactly what I'm dealing with. That's crazy. You could just ignore her. Let her file her charges and fight it in court. And let her control the narrative. Let her tell everyone her version of what happened. Derek shook his head. No. If she wants a fight, she's going to get one. But it's going to be on my terms. He climbed into his truck and started the engine, trying to ignore the way his hands were shaking on the steering wheel. In the rearview mirror, he could see the Rusty Anchor's neon sign flickering against the night sky. Somewhere out there, Petty Officer Second Class Maya Chen was probably smiling, and Derek Morrison was beginning to understand that he had absolutely no idea what he had gotten himself into. The bronze challenge coin sat heavy in his pocket, the trident emblem pressing against his thigh like a warning he should have heeded hours ago. But it was too late for warnings now. The clock was ticking toward 1900 hours tomorrow. And Maya Chen was waiting. Derek didn't sleep that night. He lay in his apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying the confrontation in his mind over and over like a video stuck on loop. The way she had moved when she dislocated his fingers. The way she had smiled after he slapped her. The way she had thanked him like he had given her a gift. At 300 hours, he gave up on sleep entirely and started searching. His laptop screen glowed in the darkness as he typed Maya Chen Navy SEAL into Google. The results were useless. Generic articles about women in special operations, statistics about training programs, nothing specific. Nothing that confirmed or denied what the old man at the bar had suggested. But then Jake's text came through. Found something. Call me. Derek's fingers trembled as he dialed. Jake picked up on the first ring. You're not going to believe this. Jake said, his voice carrying the particular tone of someone who had seen something that shattered his understanding of reality. I talked to my buddy in intelligence. Showed him the picture I took of that challenge coin before you pocketed it. And he went pale tank. I've never seen him go pale before. He told me to forget I ever asked. Said if I knew what was good for me, I'd pretend tonight never happened. Derek's stomach dropped. That's it? That's all he said? No. He said one more thing before he hung up. Jake paused. He said that coin belongs to someone who doesn't officially exist. Someone whose personnel file requires clearance levels that he doesn't have and never will. That's impossible. She's 20 years old. She looks like a college student. Age doesn't mean anything to these people. My buddy said there was a case a few years ago, some kind of hostage situation in Southeast Asia. American missionaries held by terrorists. The rescue operation was completely classified, but rumors leaked anyway. They said a single operator infiltrated the compound alone, neutralized 4 armed hostiles in under 60 seconds, extracted all 12 hostages without a scratch. So the operator was a woman, barely out of her teens, the youngest person to ever complete DevGru selection. Jake's voice dropped lower. They call her the Ghost. Because by the time you realize she's there, it's already over. Derek ended the call without saying goodbye. His hands were shaking so badly that he dropped the phone twice before managing to set it on the nightstand. The Ghost. The tiny woman he had slapped in a bar was nicknamed the Ghost. At 600 hours, his phone rang with an official naval number. Staff Sergeant Morrison. This is Lieutenant Commander Williams from Naval Special Warfare Command. I'm calling to confirm your participation in tonight's training exercise. Derek's throat went dry. Yes, I received the message. Outstanding. Report to Building 719 at 1900 hours. Wear appropriate physical training attire. The exercise will involve close-quarters combat simulation, so come prepared for educational activities. What exactly is going to happen tonight? There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Williams spoke again, his voice carried something that sounded almost like sympathy. Staff Sergeant, I'm going to give you some advice that you didn't ask for. When you walk into that facility tonight, forget everything you think you know about combat. Forget your ranger training. Forget your deployments. Forget every assumption you've ever made about what strength looks like. Another pause. And pray that Petty Officer Chen is in a teaching mood rather than a demonstrating mood. The line went dead. Derek sat on the edge of his bed for a long time, staring at the phone in his hand. His damaged fingers throbbed with each heartbeat, a constant reminder of how quickly and easily she had hurt him. And that had been in a bar with no preparation, with no intention of causing real harm. Tonight would be different. Tonight, she would be ready. Across town, Maya Chen was finishing her morning workout when Senior Chief Marcus Webb found her in the base gym. She was on the pull-up bar, executing slow, controlled repetitions with perfect form. Her split lip had scabbed over during the night, leaving only a thin, dark line that would be invisible within days. But Webb noticed it immediately. "Rough night?" he asked, leaning against the weight rack. Maya dropped from the bar and grabbed her towel. "Productive night?" "That's not what I heard." Webb crossed his arms. "Word travels fast on this base, Chen. Half the command already knows what happened at the Rusty Anchor." "Good. Saves me the trouble of filing an official report." "You're not going to file a report. Why would I?" Maya wiped the sweat from her face. "I have something better planned." Webb studied her for a long moment. He had been her mentor since she completed selection 2 years ago, guiding her through the transition from prodigy candidate to operational asset. He had seen her in training. He had seen her in combat. He had seen her do things that would have broken lesser operators. But he had never seen this particular expression on her face before. "What are you planning, Chen? A lesson. For the ranger who hit you. For everyone." Maya tossed her towel into the laundry bin. "Senior Chief, how many times have we had this conversation? How many times has some new team member questioned whether I belong here? How many times has someone looked at me and seen a liability instead of an asset? Too many. Exactly. And every time I've proven myself through performance, through mission results, through putting in twice the work to earn half the respect." Maya's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. "I'm tired of proving myself quietly. Tonight I'm going to prove something loudly, something that nobody who sees it will ever forget. And the ranger, he's the teaching example. He volunteered for the position when he put his hands on me." Webb nodded slowly. He understood what she was doing. More importantly, he understood why. "The facility is booked. I saw the request come through this morning." He uncrossed his arms. "You've got observers lined up, too. Some pretty impressive names on that list. The more witnesses, the more effective the lesson." "Chen." Webb's voice softened. "Whatever happens tonight, make sure it's about education and not revenge. Those are two very different things, and only one of them will help you in the long run." Maya met his eyes. "Senior Chief, if I wanted revenge, Staff Sergeant Morrison wouldn't have walked out of that bar last night. He would have been carried out, in pieces. She picked up her gym bag. Tonight isn't about hurting him. It's about teaching him. Teaching all of them. Teaching them what? That the most dangerous person in any room is usually the one they underestimate the most. She walked out of the gym, leaving Webb standing alone among the weights and machines. He had trained operators for 20 years. He had seen the best of the best at work. But Maya Chen was something else entirely. God help anyone who mistook her size for weakness. God help Staff Sergeant Derek Morrison. By 1400 hours, Derek had called every contact he could think of. His commanding officer had been sympathetic, but unhelpful. You assaulted a federal officer, Morrison. Be grateful she's offering you an alternative to formal charges. His JAG contact had been blunt. The video from the bar clearly shows you initiating physical contact. Her response with the finger manipulation could be argued as self-defense. Your subsequent slap is textbook assault. If she files charges, you're looking at minimum reduction in rank, maximum brig time. His ranger buddy, who had completed joint training with SEALs, had been terrified. Devgru dude, these aren't regular SEALs. These are the operators who killed bin Laden. These are the people who do things that make other special forces look like Boy Scouts. If one of them has targeted you for a training exercise, you should seriously consider desertion. By 1600 hours, Derek had assembled his backup team. Jake Robinson had agreed to participate despite his reservations. Someone needs to watch your back. Even if watching your back means carrying your unconscious body to medical. Sergeant First Class Tom Williams had volunteered because he didn't believe the stories. 1 woman against 4 Rangers. That's not a training exercise. That's a mismatch. We'll show these Navy boys what Army looks like. Private First Class Danny Martinez had been voluntold by his commanding officer. Consider this a learning opportunity, his CO had said with a smirk that suggested he knew something Derek didn't. At 1800 hours, they loaded into Derek's truck and drove toward Naval Special Warfare Command. The base seemed different at night, more serious, more dangerous. Security checkpoints that waved through personnel during daylight hours now scrutinized credentials with suspicious intensity. Armed guards who normally looked bored now watched their vehicle like it contained potential threats. Something's different, Jake muttered. Something's wrong. It's just nerves, Derek said, but his voice lacked conviction. Building 718 loomed at the end of a long access road, a concrete structure with no windows and no external markings. The kind of building that existed on official maps, but was never discussed in official conversations. Derek parked and sat for a moment, staring at the entrance. Last chance to back out, Jake offered. We could just drive away, deal with whatever charges come. No. Derek opened his door. I'm not running from a fight, and I'm definitely not running from a girl half my size. They walked toward the entrance as a Group 4 Rangers projecting confidence they didn't entirely feel. A petty officer met them at the door, his expression neutral, but his eyes carrying something that looked like anticipation. Staff Sergeant Morrison, I'm Petty Officer Reynolds. I'll be handling logistics for tonight's exercise. Where is she? Petty Officer Chen is completing her preparations. You'll be briefed in the staging area, then we'll proceed to the training facility. Reynolds checked his tablet. Your teammates have all signed the standard liability waivers. Liability waivers, standard procedure for combat simulation exercises, covers minor injuries sustained during training activities. Reynolds looked up. You did read the documentation that was sent this morning. Derek hadn't read anything. He had been too busy panicking. Just show us where to go. Reynolds led them through a series of security doors, each one requiring increasingly complex credentials. The corridor seemed to stretch forever, fluorescent lights humming overhead, the air growing colder as they descended deeper into the building. How far underground is this place? Jake asked nervously. The multi-environment training facility spans 3 levels below ground, Reynolds answered. It's designed to simulate various operational environments without external interference or observation. So nobody can see what happens down here. Nobody except the monitoring team, the medical staff, and the command observers. Reynolds stopped at a final door. This is the staging area. Gear up, receive your briefing, and wait for the exercise initiation signal. He opened the door and stepped aside. Inside, 4 sets of tactical equipment had been laid out on benches. Protective padding communication headsets, impact sensors, biometric monitoring devices. Everything looked professional and well-maintained. Everything also looked like it was designed to accurately measure exactly how badly they were about to be hurt. Gear up, Derek told his team. Whatever happens in there, we stick together. We watch each other's backs. We don't let her isolate any of us. What if she's actually as good as everyone says? Martinez asked quietly. She's not. She can't be. Derek started strapping on his equipment. She's 5'2". She weighs maybe 115 pounds. I don't care how much training someone has, physics doesn't stop applying just because you went to a fancy selection course. Physics, Tom Williams laughed, but there was no humor in it. Yeah, physics is definitely on our side. A screen on the wall flickered to life, displaying their biometric readings. 4 heart rates. 4 blood pressure measurements, 4 stress indicators, all of them elevated beyond normal ranges. Above the screen, a camera lens glinted in the low light. Someone was watching. The intercom crackled. Exercise initiation in 15 minutes. All participants should complete equipment checks and proceed to designated starting positions. Derek finished securing his gear and looked at his team. They looked back at him with expressions that ranged from nervous to terrified. Remember, he said, she's just one person. We have the numbers. We have the training. We have the size advantage. But even as he spoke, the words Derek couldn't shake the feeling that none of those things were going to matter. Somewhere in this facility, Maya Chen was waiting. Somewhere in this facility, the ghost was preparing to teach a lesson that 4 Army Rangers would remember for the rest of their lives. The intercom crackled again. 10 minutes to exercise initiation. All participants prepare for tactical deployment. Derek's damaged hand throbbed. The clock was ticking. And in the observation deck, 3 floors above Commander Patricia Webb, watched the biometric feeds with growing interest. Beside her, 6 other senior officers had gathered to witness what promised to be an extraordinary demonstration of capability. Chen's heart rate is 54 beats per minute, Lieutenant Commander Harrison observed. She's actually more relaxed now than she was during this morning's briefing. That's because she's entering operational mode, Webb replied. For her, this isn't stressful. This is what she was trained to do. And the Rangers, Harrison checked the secondary displays. Heart rates averaging 140, elevated cortisol, classic pre-combat stress responses. They're already losing, someone muttered, and they don't even know it yet. The main display showed Maya completing her final equipment check. She moved with the fluid efficiency of someone who had performed the same actions thousands of times in far more dangerous circumstances. Her expression was calm, focused, almost serene. She looked like someone about to teach a class. She looked like exactly what she was, the most dangerous person in the building, preparing to demonstrate why appearances meant absolutely nothing when skill was absolute. 5 minutes to exercise initiation. Maya's voice came through the communication system clear and professional. Control, this is Sierra 1. Is Sierra. All systems operational. Ready to begin. In the staging area, Derek heard her voice and felt something cold settle in his stomach. She sounded bored. She sounded like someone who had already won. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice that sounded suspiciously like the old man from the bar whispered a warning he should have heeded 24 hours ago. The most dangerous opponent is the one who controls the battlefield before the first shot is fired. Maya Chen had been controlling this battlefield since the moment Derek Morrison decided she looked like an easy target. He just hadn't realized it until now. 2 minutes to exercise initiation. Derek closed his eyes and tried to steady his breathing. It didn't work. His heart rate climbed to 160 beats per minute, and in the observation deck, Commander Webb smiled grimly. "It's beginning," she said. The lights died without warning. One moment, Derek could see his teammates. The next moment, he was standing in absolute darkness, his heart slamming against his ribs like it was trying to escape. "Stay calm," he hissed. "Night vision, now!" 4 sets of goggles activated simultaneously, transforming the blackness into an eerie green landscape. The training facility stretched before them like a maze designed by someone who understood fear. Corridors branched in multiple directions. Obstacles created shadows within shadows. And somewhere in that labyrinth, Maya Chen was waiting. "Control, this is Alpha Team. We have visual." Derek's voice sounded steadier than he felt. "Proceeding to primary objective." Reynolds' voice came through their headsets. "Acknowledged, Alpha Team. Your objective is to retrieve the intelligence package located in the central chamber. Opposition force is active. Exercise clock is running." "Opposition force," Jake muttered. "That's a fancy way of saying one tiny woman who's going to try to murder us." "Stay focused." Derek started moving forward, weapon raised. "Standard formation. Williams, you're on point. Martinez, cover our 6. Jake, stay close to me." They advanced through the first corridor in textbook fashion, each man covering his assigned sector, each footstep placed with deliberate care. Their breathing was too loud in the enclosed space. Their heartbeats were even louder. "I don't like this," Martinez whispered. "It's too quiet." "That's because she hasn't engaged yet." Williams swept his weapon across an intersection. "She's probably watching us right now, gathering intelligence, looking for weaknesses." "We don't have weaknesses. We're Rangers." "Everyone has weaknesses, kid. The question is whether she's good enough to find them." In the observation deck, Commander Webb leaned forward as Maya's position indicator moved on the tactical display. She had been motionless for the first 3 minutes of the exercise, allowing Derek's team to advance deep into the facility. Now she was circling behind them with the patient precision of a predator selecting its first target. "She's going for Martinez," Harrison observed. "The youngest. The most nervous. She's isolating the weak link." Webb nodded. "Classic tactics. Remove the most vulnerable target first, then use that disappearance to destabilize the rest of the team." "Should we warn them?" "This is a training exercise, Lieutenant Commander. They're supposed to learn something." Down in the facility, Martinez was struggling to control his fear. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every sound made him flinch. He kept glancing over his shoulder, certain that someone was right behind him, certain that the next second would bring contact. He was right. Maya materialized from the darkness like she had been formed from it. One moment, Martinez was covering the rear of the formation. The next moment, a hand clamped over his mouth and he was being pulled backward into a side corridor with terrifying speed. He tried to scream. He tried to fight. He tried to do anything that might alert his teammates. But Maya's grip was like iron wrapped in silk, and her voice in his ear was calm and professional. "Don't struggle. This will be over in 3 seconds." Martinez felt pressure against his neck. Not painful, not even particularly uncomfortable, just pressure in exactly the right spot to make consciousness slip away, like water through fingers. The last thing he heard before everything went dark was Maya's voice again. 2 down, 2 to go. Martinez, report. Derek stopped at the next intersection, suddenly aware that he couldn't hear the youngest member of his team anymore. Martinez, what's your status? Silence. Jake, when did you last see Martinez? Jake turned his night vision, scanning the corridor behind them. He was right there. He was right behind me 30 seconds ago. Well, he's not there now. Williams moved back to investigate his weapon, sweeping the shadows with increased urgency. Martinez, sound off. Nothing. She got him. Jake's voice cracked. She got him without making a sound. We didn't hear anything. We didn't see anything. That's impossible. We were in formation. He was 10 feet behind us. Then where is he, Tank? Where the hell is he? Derek's mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Martinez was young and inexperienced, but he was still a ranger, still trained for exactly this kind of scenario. How had she taken him without any of them noticing? Control, this is Alpha Team. We've lost contact with one team member. Request status update. Reynolds's voice came back with infuriating calm. Team member Martinez has been neutralized. Biometrics show he's conscious and uninjured. Exercise continues. Neutralized. What does that mean? It means he's out of the exercise, Staff Sergeant. You're down to 3. Derek exchanged looks with Jake and Williams. 3 minutes into the exercise, and they had already lost a quarter of their team. To a woman they had never seen move. New plan, Derek said. We stay tight. Nobody more than arm's reach from someone else. She can't take us if we're watching each other. What about the objective? Forget the objective. Our new objective is surviving long enough to actually see her. They reformed into a tighter group and continued advancing, but the confidence was gone. Every step felt like walking deeper into a trap. Every shadow seemed to hide threats they couldn't identify. Williams was next. He had been Army for 14 years. 3 combat deployments, Ranger qualified, Airborne qualified. He had survived firefights that killed better men. He had walked through valleys where Taliban snipers waited behind every rock. None of that prepared him for Maya Chen. She came from above. Williams never knew how she had gotten up there, never understood how someone could move through a 3-dimensional space with such complete disregard for normal human limitations. One moment he was scanning the corridor ahead. The next moment something hit him from directly overhead, driving him to the ground with precise, controlled force. His weapon went flying. His night vision goggles were knocked askew, and before he could process what was happening, he felt the same pressure against his neck that Martinez had felt. 3 seconds, Maya whispered. Use them to think about everything you assumed wrong. Williams tried to grab her, tried to use his superior size and strength to throw her off, but she had positioned herself perfectly, using leverage and anatomy to neutralize every physical advantage he possessed. 1, she counted. His vision started to blur. 2. His arm stopped responding to commands. 3. Darkness. Derek heard Williams hit the ground and spun toward the sound weapon, raised, every nerve screaming with the need to identify the threat. He saw nothing. Williams. Jake was already moving toward the sound. Williams respond, don't. Derek grabbed Jake's arm. Don't separate. That's what she wants. She just took Williams. He's right there. And if you go after him alone, you'll be next. Derek pulled Jake back. Stay with me. Stay close. Control, we've lost Williams. Derek's voice was barely controlled now. 2 team members neutralized. Request immediate extraction. Negative Alpha Team. Exercise continues until completion or voluntary surrender. Surrender? Jake's laugh was high and desperate. We're surrendering to a woman half our size. We're not surrendering to anyone. Derek's grip tightened on his weapon. She has to show herself eventually. When she does, we'll be ready. Ready for what? We can't even see her. She took out Martinez and Williams without either of us noticing. What makes you think we'll see her coming for us? Because I'll be watching for her. That's what Williams said, Tank. That's what Williams said right before she dropped him from the ceiling. In the observation deck, the atmosphere had shifted from professional interest to something closer to awe. 7 senior officers watched Maya's systematic dismantling of the Ranger team with the appreciation of people witnessing something extraordinary. She's not even elevated, Harrison reported, studying Maya's biometric readings. Heart rate 56, breathing normal, cortisol levels actually lower than baseline. She's in flow state. A Captain Morrison from the Marine Liaison Office shook his head. I've read about it, but I've never actually seen it on a monitor before. She's treating this like a morning jog. Meanwhile, the remaining 2 Rangers are approaching cardiac stress levels. Webb pointed to Derek and Jake's readings. Heart rate's over 170. They're operating on pure adrenaline now. How much longer will she wait? That depends on what she wants them to learn. Webb settled back in her chair. If she wanted to end this quickly, it would already be over. The fact that she's taking her time suggests she has something specific in mind. Down in the facility, Derek and Jake had backed themselves into a corner. Literally. They stood with their backs against solid walls, weapons pointed outward, covering every possible approach vector. This is insane. Jake's voice had lost all pretense of calm. We're 2 combat veterans hiding in a corner because of one woman. One woman who took out 2 Rangers without breaking a sweat. Derek's eyes never stopped scanning. One woman who's playing with us like a cat plays with mice. So what do? We wait. She has to come for us eventually. When she does, we'll have clear lines of fire. 2 against 1 point-blank range. Even she can't beat those odds. You said she couldn't take Martinez without us noticing. You said we'd see her coming for Williams. Jake's weapon trembled in his hands. Everything you've said has been wrong, Tank. Why should I believe you now? Derek didn't have an answer. The seconds stretched into minutes. The minutes felt like hours. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound seemed to signal approaching danger. The waiting was worse than any combat Derek had ever experienced. At least in real firefights, you could see your enemy. You could understand the threat. You could respond with something other than pure, helpless terror. Then Maya's voice echoed through the facility, calm and clear, and somehow coming from everywhere at once. Staff Sergeant Morrison, I think it's time we talked. Derek spun toward the sound weapon raised. Show yourself. Why would I do that? You still have weapons. You still have your teammate. You still think you have a chance. We do have a chance. 2 against 1. Is that what you see? Maya's voice carried a note of something that might have been amusement. Let me offer a different perspective. Your team started with 4 trained Rangers, combined combat experience of over 30 years, combined weight advantage of approximately 500 pounds, every tactical advantage you could ask for. And in 6 minutes I've reduced you to 2 terrified men hiding in a corner, too scared to advance, too scared to retreat, waiting for me to decide when the lesson ends. Jake's breathing had become rapid and shallow. She's trying to get in our heads. That's all this is. Psychological warfare. Is it working? Maya asked pleasantly. No. Then why is your heart rate at 182, Sergeant Robinson? Why have your hands been shaking for the last 4 minutes? Why did you just step closer to Staff Sergeant Morrison, even though you know that makes you both easier targets? Jake looked down at his hands. They were shaking exactly as much as Maya had described. How do you know my name? he demanded. "I know everything about you, Sergeant. I've been watching you all night, learning your patterns, understanding your weaknesses." A pause. "I did the same thing at the bar last night. Did you notice? No. You were too busy laughing at your friend's jokes, too busy assuming you had nothing to worry about. Show yourself, damn it. If you insist." Maya stepped into view at the end of the corridor. She was alone. Unarmed. Standing in the open with no cover, no concealment, no apparent protection from the two weapons trained directly at her center mass. Derek's finger found the trigger. "Don't move." "I'm not going to move, Staff Sergeant. I'm going to stand here and give you exactly what you wanted." Maya's voice remained calm. "You have weapons. I don't. You have a teammate. I'm alone. You have clear lines of fire and a stationary target." She spread her arms. "This is your chance. Take it." Jake's weapon steadied. "She's right there. We can end this." Wait. Something was wrong. Derek could feel it. "This is too easy. Too easy, Tank. She's giving herself to us. Shoot her." "No." Derek lowered his weapon slightly. "She's not giving herself to us. She's testing us." Maya smiled, the same smile she had given him after he slapped her. "Very good, Staff Sergeant. You're learning." "Learning what? That the moment you thought you had control was the moment you lost everything." Maya took a step forward. "You could have shot me just now. The impact sensors in my gear would have registered hits. The exercise would have ended. You would have won, technically speaking. So why didn't we?" "Because somewhere in your mind you understood the truth. If I'm standing in the open with no protection, it's because I've already calculated every possible outcome. It's because I know something you don't." Another step forward. "It's because this was never a fight. It was a lesson. And the lesson isn't over yet." Derek raised his weapon again. "Stay back, or what you'll shoot me. We've already established that you had your chance and didn't take it." Maya continued walking forward with the unhurried pace of someone who had all the time in the world. "Your hesitation tells me everything I need to know. You're not soldiers right now. You're students, and class is still in session." She was 20 feet away, then 15, then 10. Jake's nerve broke first. He lunged forward, attempting to tackle her before she could get close enough to use the same techniques she had used on Martinez and Williams. It was like watching someone try to catch smoke. Maya sidestepped his rush with a simple pivot, redirected his momentum with a subtle shift of her weight, and guided him into the wall beside her with just enough force to stun but not injure. Before Jake could recover, her hand found the same pressure point she had used twice before. 3 seconds, she said softly. Jake's eyes went wide with understanding, then slowly closed as consciousness slipped away. Derek stood alone. "Your turn, Staff Sergeant." Maya turned to face him. "Unless you'd like to surrender now and save us both some time." "I'm not surrendering to you." "No." Maya tilted her head. "Why not? Your entire team is neutralized. You've seen what I can do. You know you can't beat me in a physical confrontation. What exactly are you hoping to accomplish?" "I'm hoping to land one hit." Derek set his weapon aside and raised his fists. "Just one. Something to prove that you're not invincible." "I'm not invincible, Staff Sergeant. I'm trained. There's a difference." Maya mirrored his stance. "If you want to try, I won't stop you. But I should warn you, the last time someone threw a punch at me, they ended up in this facility learning the same lesson you're about to learn." Derek swung. It was a good punch. Technically sound, properly executed. The kind of punch that had won him plenty of bar fights and earned him plenty of respect over the years. Maya wasn't there when it arrived. She had moved. Not far. Just enough. Just the precise distance needed to make his fist pass through empty air while positioning herself for a response. Her counter wasn't a punch or a kick, or any of the flashy techniques that movies showed. It was something simpler. Something worse. A joint manipulation applied to his extended arm that sent white-hot pain screaming through his shoulder and dropped him to his knees. "That's one," Maya said calmly. "Would you like to try again?" Derek tried to rise, tried to swing with his other hand, tried to do anything that might change the outcome. Maya responded to each attempt with the same precise efficiency. A pressure point here, a leverage technique there. Nothing that would cause permanent damage. Everything designed to educate rather than destroy. Within 60 seconds, Derek was on the ground, unable to move, staring up at the woman who had dismantled 4 Army Rangers like they were children playing soldier. "The exercise is over," Maya announced to the monitoring systems. "All opposition force members have been neutralized. No permanent injuries. No excessive force." Then she crouched beside Derek, close enough that he could see the faint scar on her lip, where he had slapped her the night before. "Do you understand now, Staff Sergeant? Do you understand what you actually slapped in that bar?" Derek's voice came out as barely a whisper. "What are you? I'm a petty officer, 2nd class in the United States Navy. I'm a graduate of the most demanding military training program on Earth. I'm someone who has done things in service to this country that you will never know about and could never understand." Maya's voice remained calm, almost gentle. "And I'm the woman you thought was an easy target because I was small and quiet, and didn't fight back immediately. Why didn't you fight back, I mean, last night? Because last night I had a choice. I could have responded to your assault with immediate violence. I could have hurt you badly enough that you would have spent months in a hospital learning to use your hands again." Maya stood. "Instead, I chose this. A controlled environment, documented proceedings, a lesson that would be remembered not just by you, but by everyone who witnessed it. A lesson about what?" Maya looked down at him with an expression that carried no anger, no resentment, no personal animosity. Only the calm authority of someone who had proven a point beyond any possible dispute. "A lesson about underestimating people, Staff Sergeant. A lesson about assumptions. A lesson about the difference between appearance and capability." She offered him her hand. "Class is dismissed, but I expect you to remember what you learned here today." Derek stared at her hand for a long moment. Then slowly, he reached up and let her help him to his feet. Derek's legs wouldn't stop shaking. He stood in the facility's debrief room, surrounded by his teammates who had regained consciousness one by one, each wearing the same expression of stunned disbelief. Martinez kept touching his neck where Maya had applied pressure. William stared at the wall like he was seeing something the rest of them couldn't. Jake hadn't spoken a single word since waking up, and Maya Chen sat across the conference table from them, completely composed her uniform, showing no signs of the physical activity that had systematically dismantled 4 trained Army Rangers in under 15 minutes. "Let's begin with basic outcomes," Commander Webb announced from the head of the table. Her voice carried the weight of someone who had witnessed everything and was now presiding over the inevitable reckoning. All participants completed the exercise without permanent injury. All training objectives were achieved within established safety parameters. "Training objectives," Derek's voice came out hoarse. "What exactly were the training objectives?" Webb consulted her tablet. The stated objective was to demonstrate advanced close-quarters combat techniques in a controlled environment. The practical objective was to provide educational experience for all participants regarding capability assessment and threat evaluation. In other words, Jake finally spoke, his voice flat. The objective was to teach us that we're not as tough as we thought we were. The objective was to teach you that assumptions can be dangerous, Sergeant Robinson. Maya's voice remained calm and professional. You assumed that because I was small and female and young, I represented a minimal threat. That assumption nearly cost you in a training environment. In an operational environment, it would have cost you your life. Martinez raised his hand like a student in a classroom. Ma'am, how did you take me out? I never even saw you. You weren't supposed to see me, Private. That's the point. Maya turned to face him directly. You were covering the rear of your formation, but you were doing it mechanically. Your attention was focused on a specific arc, and you checked it at predictable intervals. I timed my approach to coincide with the gaps in your awareness. But I was trained for this. We all were. You were trained for conventional threats. I was trained to be unconventional. Maya's tone carried no condescension, only the patient authority of an instructor explaining a fundamental concept. The techniques I used tonight aren't secret or magical. They're applications of principles that any special operations manual will cover. The difference is in execution. Williams leaned forward, his pride clearly wounded, but his professional curiosity overriding it. The ceiling approach. How did you get above me without anyone noticing? The facility has maintenance access points throughout the structure. While your team was focused on horizontal threats, I repositioned vertically. It's basic three-dimensional thinking, but most people are conditioned to process tactical environments in 2 dimensions. Three-dimensional thinking. Williams shook his head slowly. I've been in the Army for 14 years. I've survived 3 combat deployments, and a 20-year-old just used three-dimensional thinking to drop me like a sack of potatoes. Age doesn't determine capability, Sergeant Williams. Training does. Experience does. The willingness to push beyond conventional limitations does. Maya paused. I started my training when I was 17. I've spent every day since then learning how to do exactly what I demonstrated tonight. Commander Webb interrupted. Staff Sergeant Morrison, I believe you have something you'd like to say. Derek looked up from the table where he had been studying his hands. His damaged fingers still ached from the night before, a constant reminder of how completely he had misjudged the woman sitting across from him. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. For last night. For what I said. For what I did. Go on. I made assumptions about you based on how you looked. I thought because you were small and quiet, you were weak. I thought because you didn't fight back immediately, you couldn't fight back at all. Derek's voice cracked slightly. I was wrong. I was wrong about everything. Maya studied his face for a long moment, assessing whether his words were genuine or simply driven by the circumstances. Derek met her gaze without flinching, and something in his expression must have satisfied her evaluation. What specifically were you wrong about, Staff Sergeant? I was wrong to think that strength looks a certain way. I was wrong to assume that restraint means inability. I was wrong to believe that my size and my training made me superior to someone I'd never even bothered to understand. Derek took a deep breath. I was raised to believe that real warriors look like me, talk like me, act like me. Tonight showed me that real warriors can look like anything, act like anything, be anyone. And what are you going to do with that understanding? The question hung in the air. Everyone in the room knew that Derek's answer would determine not just the outcome of this particular incident, but the trajectory of his entire career. I'm going to change, Derek said finally. Not because you're forcing me to, not because I'm afraid of what you might do if I don't, but because you showed me something tonight that I needed to see. You showed me what real capability looks like, and it doesn't look anything like what I thought. Maya nodded slowly. That's a good start, Staff Sergeant. But understanding is only the first step. The question is whether you're willing to do the work to become something better than what you were. I am. Prove it. Derek blinked. How? Maya reached into her pocket and produced the challenge coin he had taken from the bar the night before. She placed it on the table between them, the trident emblem catching the fluorescent light. There's a program at Joint Special Operations Command, cross-training initiative designed to expose conventional forces to advanced tactical methodologies. The selection process is competitive, the training is brutal, and the washout rate is over 70%. Maya pushed the coin toward Derek. I'm recommending you for consideration. The room went silent. Jake found his voice first. You're recommending him after what he did to you. I'm recommending him because of what he showed me tonight. Maya's eyes never left Derek's face. He could have surrendered when he realized he couldn't win. Instead, he stood and fought. He could have made excuses or blamed his teammates. Instead, he took responsibility. He could have let his pride prevent him from acknowledging the truth. Instead, he admitted he was wrong. Those are qualities that matter, Sergeant Robinson. Those are qualities that can be developed into something valuable. Maya stood. Staff Sergeant Morrison made a terrible mistake last night, but mistakes can be corrected. Character flaws can be addressed. Potential can be cultivated. She looked at Derek with an expression that held no anger, no resentment, only professional assessment. I see potential. The question is whether he's willing to earn the right to fulfill it. Derek picked up the challenge coin and felt its weight in his palm. 24 hours ago, he had seen it as evidence of his victim's pretension. Now he understood it for what it really was, proof of accomplishment he couldn't begin to comprehend. Why? He asked quietly. Why would you help me after everything I did? Maya's answer cut through the room like a blade. Because hurting you would have been easy. Teaching you is harder. And I've never been interested in doing things the easy way. The formal debrief concluded 30 minutes later, after every tactical decision had been analyzed and every training point had been documented. Commander Webb dismissed the participants with instructions to report for follow-up medical evaluation in the morning, but asked Maya to remain behind. When the door closed and they were alone, Webb set down her tablet and studied the young woman who had just delivered one of the most impressive tactical demonstrations she had ever witnessed. That was quite a show, Lieutenant Commander Chen. It wasn't a show, ma'am. It was a lesson. The distinction being, a show is about entertainment, a lesson is about education. Maya remained at attention. Everything that happened tonight was designed to teach specific principles. The observers learned what DevGru capabilities look like in practice. The participants learned what happens when you underestimate an opponent. The documentation will serve as training material for future personnel. Webb nodded slowly. And what about you? What did you learn? The question seemed to catch Maya off guard. For the first time since the evening began, her composed expression flickered with something more personal. I learned that I'm still angry, she admitted. About last night. About every time someone has looked at me and seen a liability instead of an asset. About every assumption that's ever been made about my capabilities based on things that have nothing to do with my actual performance. That anger showed tonight. No, ma'am. That's what I learned. I was angry, but I didn't let the anger control my decisions. I had every opportunity to hurt Staff Sergeant Morrison badly. I chose not to because hurting him wouldn't have accomplished anything meaningful. Maya's voice steadied. Senior Chief Webb always told me that the mark of a true professional is the ability to separate emotion from execution. Tonight proved I could do that. Senior Chief Webb is a wise man. He taught me everything I know about being more than just a weapon. Webb was quiet for a moment, considering her next words carefully. Maya, what you did tonight will be talked about for years. The video of your exercise will be studied at war colleges. The tactical analysis will become required reading for special operations candidates. She paused. But I need to know that you did this for the right reasons. Not revenge. Not proving something to yourself. Not personal satisfaction. Maya met her commander's eyes without hesitation. I did it because someone needed to. Because every woman who serves in this military deserves to know that capability matters more than appearance. Because every man who thinks he can put his hands on someone he perceives as weak deserves to learn how wrong that assumption can be. Her voice carried quiet conviction. And yes, ma'am, I did it because Staff Sergeant Morrison hit me, and I wanted him to understand what a mistake that was. I'm not going to pretend I'm above feeling satisfaction about how tonight went. At least you're honest. I try to be, ma'am. Webb stood and extended her hand. Petty Officer Chen, you've represented your unit and your community with distinction. Whatever happens next with Morrison and his career, you've demonstrated something important tonight. Something that will matter long after the bruises fade and the paperwork is filed. Maya shook her commander's hand. Thank you, ma'am. One more thing. Webb's grip tightened slightly. That recommendation for Morrison, did you mean it every word? Why honestly? Maya considered the question. Because he reminded me of myself, ma'am. Not the anger or the prejudice, but the potential underneath. The willingness to learn once his assumptions were stripped away. She released Webb's hand. Someone took a chance on me once. A 17-year-old girl who thought she had something to prove. They could have dismissed me as too young, too small, too female for this life. Instead, they saw something worth developing. And you see that in Morrison. I see the possibility of it. Whether he actually develops it is up to him. Webb nodded. Dismissed, Petty Officer. Get some rest. You've earned it. Maya left the conference room and walked through the quiet corridors of Building 718, her footsteps echoing in the empty spaces. The adrenaline that had carried her through the exercise was finally beginning to fade, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion that reminded her she was still human, despite everything tonight had demonstrated. She found Derek waiting outside the main entrance alone in the Virginia Beach night. Petty Officer Chen. He straightened when he saw her approach. I thought you'd already left. I had a debrief with Commander Webb. Right, of course. Derek shifted uncomfortably. I thought I should. You wanted to say something without the audience. Yeah, something like that. Maya stopped a few feet away from him, close enough for conversation, far enough to maintain professional distance. Go ahead. Derek took a deep breath. In the facility, you said you had a choice. Last night at the bar, you said you could have hurt me badly enough to put me in a hospital. That's correct. But you didn't. Even though I deserved it. Even though nobody would have blamed you. Derek's voice was raw with something that might have been shame. Why? Why choose the harder path when the easier one would have been completely justified? Maya was quiet for a moment, considering how to answer. The question cut to the heart of everything she believed about power and responsibility and the kind of person she wanted to be. When I was 19, she said finally, I was part of a hostage rescue operation in Southeast Asia. 12 American missionaries held by a terrorist cell that had already killed 4 of them on video. The details are classified, but I can tell you that I did things during that mission that I'll never be able to talk about. Things that were necessary, but not something I'm proud of. What does that have to do with last night? Everything. Maya's voice softened. When you're trained the way I was trained, you develop capabilities that most people can't imagine. You learn how to hurt people, how to kill people, how to do things that would give normal people nightmares for the rest of their lives. But the training also teaches you something else. It teaches you that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. It teaches you that the measure of a warrior isn't how much damage they can inflict, but how much control they have over their own power. Derek listened in silence. Last night when you slapped me, every instinct I'd developed through years of training screamed at me to respond with immediate violence, to demonstrate exactly how badly you had miscalculated, to make you understand what you had attacked in a way you would never forget. Maya met his eyes. I didn't do that because my training also includes knowing when violence is necessary and when it isn't. You weren't a terrorist threatening innocent lives. You were a drunk with an ego problem. Responding to you with the same force I'd use against an actual enemy would have made me no better than you were in that moment. So you chose this instead. The training exercise, the lesson. I chose to channel my anger into something productive, something that would actually teach, rather than simply punish. Maya paused. And yes, Staff Sergeant, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't satisfaction in watching you realize how wrong you were. But satisfaction wasn't the point, education was. Derek was quiet for a long moment, processing everything she had said. When he spoke again, his voice carried a humility that hadn't been there 24 hours ago. I've spent my whole career thinking I was one of the tough guys, thinking that my size and my training made me special, made me better than people who didn't look like warriors were supposed to look. He shook his head slowly. Tonight showed me that everything I believed about strength and weakness was wrong, that the toughest person I've ever met is 5'2" and weighs 115 pounds. I'm not the toughest person you've ever met, Staff Sergeant. I'm just the one who taught you a lesson you needed to learn. Same thing in my book. Maya almost smiled. Take the recommendation seriously. The joint program isn't easy, but it will make you better, stronger, more capable, the kind of soldier who doesn't need to prove his worth by diminishing others. And what about you? What happens next for you? I go back to work tomorrow. Same job, same mission, same life I had before you decided to put your hands on me in a bar. Maya's voice carried quiet finality. Tonight was an interruption, an educational interruption, but an interruption nonetheless. My real work is waiting. Derek nodded slowly. If I make it through the program, if I become something better than what I was, will you remember this conversation? I'll remember everything about the last 24 hours, Staff Sergeant. I'll remember what you did at the bar. I'll remember what I taught you in the facility. And I'll remember this moment when you stood here and asked me to believe you could change. Do you believe it? Maya studied his face one last time, reading the uncertainty and the hope and the genuine desire to become something better than the man who had slapped a woman half his size because she refused his advances. I believe you have the potential to change. Whether you actually do is up to you. She turned to walk toward her car. Good luck, Staff Sergeant Morrison. You're going to need it. Petty Officer Chen. Maya paused, but didn't turn around. Thank you, Derek said quietly, for the lesson, for the recommendation, for not destroying me when you had every right to. Don't thank me yet, Staff Sergeant. The hard part hasn't even started. She walked into the Virginia Beach night without looking back, leaving Derek standing alone with the challenge coin still clutched in his hand. The bronze felt warm against his palm, and the trident emblem seemed to pulse with meaning he was only beginning to understand. In the observation deck above, the last of the senior officers were filing out, carrying with them stories they would tell for years about the night a 20-year-old woman had redefined everything they thought they knew about combat capability. In the medical station, Martinez, Williams, and Jake were receiving final clearances, each processing their experience in different ways, but all arriving at the same fundamental conclusion. And somewhere in the administrative offices of Naval Special Warfare Command paperwork was being filed that would change Derek Morrison's life forever, a recommendation from the woman he had assaulted, offering him a chance to become something better than what he was. That was the real lesson of the evening. Not the tactical demonstration, not the systematic dismantling of 4 Army Rangers, not even the precise application of techniques that had been honed through thousands of hours of training. The real lesson was simpler than any of that. The real lesson was that true strength wasn't about the ability to destroy. It was about the wisdom to choose something better. 6 months changed everything. Derek Morrison stood at attention in the graduation ceremony of the Joint Special Operations Advanced Training Program, his body 20 pounds lighter and his mind completely transformed. The man who had slapped a woman in a Virginia beach bar no longer existed. In his place stood someone who had earned every scar, every callus, and every ounce of respect the program demanded. The graduation speaker finished his remarks, and the assembled candidates began receiving their certificates. Derek waited for his name, his heart pounding with a mixture of pride and something else, something that felt like the beginning of a debt being repaid. Staff Sergeant Derek Morrison. He stepped forward and accepted his certificate from Colonel Patterson, the program director, who had nearly washed him out 4 separate times during the brutal 18-week course. Congratulations, Staff Sergeant. Patterson's handshake was firm. Your recommending officer must have seen something special in you. I'm glad you proved her right. Thank you, sir. I had a lot to prove. You did. And you did it. Patterson leaned closer, his voice dropping. She's here, you know. Back row. Been watching the whole ceremony. Derek's breath caught. He hadn't seen Maya since that night outside Building 718 when she had walked away without looking back. 6 months of wondering whether she remembered him. 6 months of pushing through pain and exhaustion and self-doubt driven by the memory of what she had taught him and the promise he had made to become better. He found her in the crowd as he returned to his seat. She was wearing civilian clothes, jeans, and a simple jacket, and she looked exactly as she had the first time he saw her. Small, quiet, completely unremarkable to anyone who didn't know what she was capable of. Their eyes met across the room, and Maya gave him the smallest nod of acknowledgement. It was enough. After the ceremony, Derek pushed through the crowd of celebrating graduates and their families. His own parents had flown in from Texas, and they were waiting near the refreshment table. But he needed to do something else first. Something that had been waiting for 6 months. Maya was standing alone near the exit when he found her, as if she had been waiting for him to come. Petty Officer Chen. Staff Sergeant Morrison, congratulations on your graduation. I wouldn't be here without you. That's not true. The recommendation got you in the door. Everything after that was you. Derek shook his head. No, I mean I literally wouldn't be here. Not just in this program. Here, in this version of myself. He struggled to find the right words. Before that night I was heading towards something bad. I could feel it. The drinking, the anger, the need to prove myself by tearing other people down. If you hadn't stopped me... I didn't stop you, Staff Sergeant. I redirected you. There's a difference. Whatever you call it, you saved me. From myself. From the person I was becoming. Derek reached into his pocket and pulled out the challenge coin she had left at the bar 6 months ago. I've carried this every day since. Whenever I wanted to quit, whenever I thought I couldn't push any harder, I looked at it and remembered what you showed me." Maya studied the coin in his palm, the trident emblem worn smooth from months of handling. "What did I show you, Staff Sergeant?" "That real strength isn't about size or aggression or making other people feel small. It's about control, discipline, the choice to build instead of destroy." Derek's voice cracked slightly. "You could have destroyed me that night. You chose to build me up instead. I've spent 6 months trying to be worthy of that choice." Maya was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried something that sounded almost like pride. "You've changed. Completely. Not just your body. Your eyes are different. The way you carry yourself." She tilted her head, assessing him with the same professional attention she had given him in the training facility. "You're not the same man who grabbed my wrist in that bar." "No, ma'am. I'm not." "Good." Maya reached out and closed his fingers around the challenge coin. "Keep it. You've earned the right to carry it now." "I haven't earned anything, not compared to what you've accomplished." "Earning isn't about comparison, Staff Sergeant. It's about growth. 6 months ago, you were someone I had to teach a lesson. Today, you're someone I'd be proud to serve alongside." Maya smiled, the first genuine smile he had ever seen from her. "That's not nothing. That's everything." Derek felt his eyes stinging and blinked rapidly. Rangers didn't cry, but Rangers also didn't get second chances from people they had wronged, and he wasn't going to waste his. "What happens now?" he asked. "For you, I mean. What's next?" "Same as always. The work continues. New missions, new challenges, new opportunities to prove that capability matters more than appearance." Maya glanced toward the door. "There's always someone who needs to learn what you learned. I just hope most of them figure it out without requiring a training facility demonstration. If they don't, you'll be there to teach them. That's the job, Staff Sergeant. That's what the training is for." Maya extended her hand. "Take care of yourself. And take care of the people under your command. Show them that strength comes in forms they might not expect." Derek shook her hand, holding on for just a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you, Petty Officer Chen, for everything." "Don't thank me. Pay it forward. That's how this works." She released his hand and walked out the door without looking back. Just like she had 6 months ago. Just like she probably always would. Derek watched her go, the challenge coin warm in his palm, and felt something shift in his chest. Not closure exactly. More like the beginning of a new chapter. He had spent his whole life believing that warriors looked a certain way, talked a certain way, acted a certain way. Maya Chen had taught him that warriors could look like anything, and he intended to spend the rest of his career proving he had learned the lesson. 3 months later, the story of what happened at the Rusty Anchor Bar had spread through every branch of the military. It traveled through official channels. First, the training video from Building 718 became required viewing for special operations candidates, and the tactical analysis was incorporated into close-quarters combat curricula across all services. Instructors used Maya's systematic dismantling of the Ranger team to illustrate principles of three-dimensional thinking, target isolation, and the dangers of assumption-based threat assessment. But the story traveled through unofficial channels, too. Whispered conversations in mess halls and barracks, embellished tales shared over drinks at military bars around the world, the legend of the ghost, the tiny woman who had turned an assault into an education and an education into a transformation. Senior Chief Marcus Webb heard the latest version from a young SEAL candidate during a training break at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado. "They say she took out 6 Rangers single-handed. the candidate said, his voice carrying the breathless excitement of someone sharing forbidden knowledge. Didn't even break a sweat. Just moved through them like they weren't there. 4 Rangers, Webb corrected. And she was plenty sweaty by the end. I trained her, I know. The candidate's eyes went wide. You trained the ghost? I trained Petty Officer 2nd Class Maya Chen. The ghost is something other people created. Webb took a sip of his coffee. The real story is less dramatic and more important than the legend. A young woman faced discrimination and assault. Instead of responding with immediate violence, she chose to teach a lesson. That lesson changed lives, including the life of the man who assaulted her. I heard he's some kind of instructor now, teaching respect and stuff. Staff Sergeant Derek Morrison completed the Joint Advanced Training Program with distinction. He now leads a cross-training initiative focused on capability assessment and threat evaluation. Webb set down his coffee. He uses his own experience as a teaching example, tells everyone exactly what he did wrong and what he learned from it. That's intense, admitting you got beat by a woman half your size. Getting beaten by Petty Officer Chen isn't something to be ashamed of. She's beaten people much more experienced than Derek Morrison. The shame would be if he hadn't learned anything from it. Webb stood. Break's over. Get back to training. Senior Chief. One more question. Make it quick. The ghost. Petty Officer Chen. Where is she now? Webb smiled. Exactly where she's supposed to be. Doing exactly what she was trained to do. And if you're lucky, you'll never have to find out the details. Maya was in fact 6,000 miles away, completing an operation that would never appear in any newspaper and would never be discussed in any official briefing. The details were classified. The location was classified. Even the existence of the mission was classified. But somewhere in a part of the world that most Americans couldn't find on a map, 12 hostages were being extracted from a situation that had seemed hopeless, and a 20-year-old operator was moving through the darkness with the lethal precision that had made her legendary. The rescue was clean, professional. Exactly what her training had prepared her for. Afterward, as the helicopter carried them toward safety, one of the hostages, a relief worker from Minnesota, who had been held for 6 weeks, grabbed Maya's hand. "Thank you," the woman whispered. "I thought I was going to die there. I thought no one was coming." "Someone always comes," Maya replied. "That's what we do." "You're so young. How can you do this? How can you be so calm?" Maya considered the question. She had been asked versions of it countless times by instructors, by teammates, by the people she rescued. The answer had evolved over the years, becoming clearer with each mission, each challenge, each moment when her training intersected with reality. "I'm calm because I've prepared for this my entire adult life. I'm young because age doesn't determine capability, and I do this because someone has to." Maya squeezed the woman's hand. "Because the world is full of people who prey on others, and someone needs to stop them." "You're a hero." "I'm a petty officer in the United States Navy. Hero is just a word other people use." Maya released her hand. "Get some rest. You're safe now." The helicopter flew on through the darkness, carrying its passengers toward a dawn they had feared they would never see. And Maya Chen sat in silence, thinking about the long road that had brought her here, the training, the sacrifices, the nights when she had wondered if any of it was worth the cost. It was worth it. Every time she brought someone home who had given up hope, every time she stood between innocent people and the violence that threatened them, every time she proved that capability mattered more than appearance, it was worth it. The world would always have people, like the men who had taken these hostages. But the world would also always have people, like Maya Chen. And as long as that was true, there was hope. 4 months after the rescue operation, Maya found herself back in Virginia Beach. She hadn't intended to return to the rusty anchor bar. The memories associated with it were complicated, not traumatic exactly, but loaded with significance. She wasn't sure she wanted to revisit. But her car seemed to have other ideas, and before she fully processed what she was doing, she was parking in the same lot where Derek Morrison had waited for her almost a year ago. The bar hadn't changed. Same neon signs, same worn leather seats, same jukebox playing the same rotation of country songs. Tommy, the bartender, was still behind the counter, his weathered face creasing into a smile when he saw her walk through the door. Well, the legend returns. I'm not a legend, Tommy, just someone who drinks ginger ale. After what happened in my bar, after what you did to that army boy and his friends. Tommy shook his head. Honey, you're a legend whether you like it or not. I've had military guys coming in here for months asking where you sat, wanting to see the booth where it all started. Maya slid onto a bar stool, a different one than she had used that night. I hope you're not giving tours. Wouldn't dream of it, but I did frame this. Tommy reached under the counter and produced a photograph in a cheap wooden frame. It showed Maya's challenge coin, the trident emblem clearly visible sitting on the bar where she had left it. Hope you don't mind. I took the picture before that chief friend of yours explained what the coin meant. What do you do with it? I show it to anyone who starts getting too aggressive in my bar. Tell them the story of what happened to the last guy who thought he could put his hands on a woman without consequences. Tommy grinned. Works better than any bouncer I've ever hired. Maya almost laughed. I suppose that's one form of education. Best kind. Prevention through reputation. Tommy poured her a ginger ale without being asked. So what brings you back, nostalgia unfinished business? Neither. I had some leave time and nowhere particular to go. Maya accepted the drink. This seemed as good a place as any. Anywhere's a good place when you've earned your rest. Tommy leaned against the bar. I heard stories, about what happened after that night. The training exercise, the video that became required watching. That army boy who changed his whole life because of what you taught him. Derek Morrison is a good soldier now. He's doing important work. Because you gave him the chance to become something better. Tommy's voice softened. Not everyone would have done that. Not everyone could have done that. After what he did to you, most people would have wanted revenge. You gave him redemption instead. Redemption isn't something you give someone, Tommy. It's something they earn. I just provided the opportunity. Same difference in my book. Maya sipped her ginger ale and let the familiar sounds of the bar wash over her. Conversations, laughter, the clink of glasses and the crack of pool balls, normal sounds, safe sounds, the kind of sounds she didn't hear very often in her actual work. Then she heard something else. A voice, male, loud, aggressive, coming from a booth near the back. I said, give me your number. What's the problem? You think you're too good for me. Maya turned slowly, her training automatically cataloging the situation. A man in his 30s, military build, clearly intoxicated. A woman in her 20s pressed against the wall of the booth, her body language screaming discomfort and fear. Two of the man's friends watching with the hungry amusement of people who sensed entertainment coming. History repeating itself. Maya set down her drink and stood. Honey, Tommy said quietly, you don't have to. I can call security. Security takes 5 minutes. This won't take that long. She walked toward the booth with the same measured pace she had used countless times before. Not aggressive, not threatening, just purposeful, just inevitable. The man didn't notice her approach until she was standing directly beside his table. When he looked up, his expression shifted from annoyed to dismissive in the span of a second. Another small woman. Another obstacle that didn't matter. "Mind your own business," he said. "This doesn't concern you." "She looks concerned." Maya's voice was calm and quiet. "And she clearly wants you to leave her alone." "So what, I'm just being friendly?" "That's not what friendly looks like." The man stood using his height to try to intimidate her. It didn't work. Maya had faced opponents twice his size in situations 1,000 times more dangerous. A drunk in a bar barely registered as a threat. "You need to walk away, little girl, before you get hurt." Maya smiled. The same smile she had given Derek Morrison almost a year ago. The same smile that had haunted his nightmares until he finally understood what it meant. "That's an interesting choice of words," she said softly. "Do you know who I am?" "Don't know, don't care." "You should." Maya reached into her pocket and produced her challenge coin, holding it up so the overhead lights caught the trident emblem. "Because the last man who tried to intimidate a woman in this bar is still telling people about what happened to him afterward." The man's eyes flicked to the coin, then back to Maya's face. He wasn't smart, but he wasn't completely stupid either. Something in her expression, something in her posture, something in the absolute confidence of her stance made him hesitate. "What are you, some kind of cop?" Something like that, but more specialized. Maya stepped close enough that she could have touched him without reaching. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize to this young woman. Then you're going to pay your tab and leave. Then you're going to spend the rest of the evening thinking about why it's a bad idea to put pressure on someone who clearly doesn't want your attention. Or I'll demonstrate what happens to people who ignore polite requests." Maya's voice didn't rise. Didn't need to. "And trust me, you don't want that demonstration." The man's friends had gone quiet, watching the confrontation with the uncomfortable awareness that something had shifted. Their buddy had picked a fight he didn't understand, and they weren't sure they wanted to be there when he lost it. "Come on, Mike," one of them said nervously. "Let's just go. She's not worth the trouble." "I'm not letting some pint-sized—" Maya moved. It wasn't an attack. It wasn't violence. It was simply a shift in position that put her inside his reach, inside his defenses, inside his personal space in a way that made every alarm in his hindbrain start screaming. "Last chance," she whispered. "Make the smart choice." The man's face went pale. He didn't understand what had just happened. Didn't understand how she had gotten so close so fast. Didn't understand why every instinct he possessed was suddenly telling him to run. But he understood enough to know that she wasn't bluffing. "Fine." He stepped back, his voice hollow. "Whatever. She's not that pretty anyway." The apology. "What? You were going to apologize?" The man looked at the young woman still pressed against the booth, then back at Maya. Whatever he saw in her eyes convinced him that arguing wasn't worth the risk. "Sorry," he muttered. "I didn't mean anything by it." "Better." Maya stepped aside to let him pass. "Don't come back here until you've learned how to treat people with respect." The man and his friends filed out without another word, leaving behind half-finished drinks and a tab that Tommy would probably write off as the cost of entertainment. The young woman in the booth sat frozen still, processing what had just happened. Maya slid into the seat across from her. "Are you okay?" Yes, I think so." The woman's voice trembled. "Thank you. I didn't know what to do. He just wouldn't stop." "They never do, until someone makes them." Maya signaled to Tommy for a glass of water. "Do you have someone you can call? Someone who can take you home?" "My roommate. She's a few blocks away." "Call her. Wait here until she arrives." Maya accepted the water from Tommy and set it in front of the woman. "And next time someone doesn't respect your boundaries, don't be afraid to make a scene. Your safety is more important than their feelings." How did you do that? Make him back down without touching him? Maya considered the question. It was the same question the rescued hostage had asked her on the helicopter. The same question every young soldier and trainee and curious civilian eventually wanted answered. I've spent my life learning how to project capability without having to demonstrate it, she said finally. The goal isn't violence. The goal is making violence unnecessary. When someone understands that continuing their behavior will have consequences they can't handle, most of them choose to stop. And the ones who don't, then they learn the hard way, like the man who sat in this same bar a year ago and made the mistake of thinking I was an easy target. The young woman's eyes widened. That was you, the story Tommy tells. That was me. The Navy SEAL who taught that Army guy a lesson. I prefer petty officer who provided educational experience. But yes. Maya stood. Your roommate should be here soon. Take care of yourself. And remember, you don't owe politeness to anyone who doesn't respect your boundaries. She walked back to the bar where Tommy was waiting with a fresh ginger ale and an expression of profound satisfaction. That never gets old, he said. Watching you work? It's not work, Tommy. It's just life. Maya accepted the drink. There will always be people who think they can take what they want from others. And there will always be people who stop them. Which category do you fall into? Maya looked at the challenge coin still sitting on the bar, the trident emblem catching the light. She thought about Derek Morrison, who had started as a threat and become an ally. She thought about the hostages she had rescued, the lessons she had taught, the lives she had changed through choice rather than violence. I fall into the category of people who believe that strength means nothing if you don't use it to protect others, she said quietly. That capability is worthless if it only serves yourself. That the measure of a warrior isn't how many enemies they can defeat, but how many people they can save. Tommy nodded slowly. That's a good answer. It's the only answer that matters. Maya finished her drink and set money on the bar, more than enough to cover her tab and the tab of the man she had just sent away. Then she picked up her challenge coin and walked toward the door. You coming back? Tommy called after her. Maya paused at the threshold, looking back at the bar where her legend had begun. The booth where Derek Morrison had grabbed her wrist. The spot where she had left her coin. The place where a slap had become a lesson, and a lesson had become a legacy. Probably not, she said. I've got work to do, people to save, lessons to teach. Then give 'em hell, petty officer. Maya smiled that same calculating smile that had haunted Derek Morrison's dreams until he finally understood what it meant. I always do. She walked out into the Virginia Beach night, and the door swung shut behind her. Somewhere across the country, Derek Morrison was teaching a class about capability assessment and respect. Somewhere across the world, special operators were studying her techniques. Somewhere in the Pentagon, her name was being mentioned in briefings she would never attend. But Maya Chen wasn't thinking about any of that. She was thinking about the next mission, the next challenge, the next opportunity to prove that strength came in forms the world didn't expect. Because that was the truth she had spent her entire adult life demonstrating. The most dangerous person in any room was often the one nobody noticed. The greatest strength was the wisdom to choose education over destruction. And the legacy worth leaving was not one of violence, but of transformation, showing others that they could become better than they were, stronger than they believed, more capable than anyone imagined. Maya Chen walked into the darkness, and the darkness made room. Some truths, after all, were eternal, and she had proven every single one of them.